Seven. No worries. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. Welcome, and I don't think we have any need for any new introductions, right? No one's online. That's okay. Okay, so our discussion question: what are you grateful for, or what's been percolating since our last meeting? What have you been all thinking about?
Well, as I thought about this, on December 8th, the Milwaukee Forest had its first birthday party. And it was in the afternoon, which is odd, but it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 250 people showed up to dedicate the welcome stone that a Native American storyteller an artist had done, and he told some stories. And the forest itself is a demonstration that you can rewild places, and it's just turned out to be a success so far. I mean, they say in 3 years we don't have to even we don't have to weed in 3 years. I'm waiting for that day, but yeah, but it looks good. It's some of the cottonwoods are 12 feet tall. They're taller than I am with my hand up. How tall? 8 feet tall. So and things are growing, and we can keep the rabbits on.
They have their place.
So I'm just gonna express my gratitude for this community emergency response team that has come together in our community and is offering free training and support so that community members can be more prepared just for, whether it's a weather event or an actual, earthquake response or something of this sort. We'll have people in our community who are better equipped to manage those first few critical hours and days, especially if it's a really bad disaster. And just in this last month, we've gotten a text chain for people who live on our street. And when the power went out, it was just really easy. Hey, is everybody okay? People check in. Yeah, we're fine over here. No problems. That's reassuring, that you don't have an older neighbor who needs a generator to keep their oxygen machine going or something. It's so I'm just really glad to see so many good opportunities in our community to come together and support each other.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go a completely different direction because I'm going in the direction of I'm thankful to be living in a place where you can forage for food. And I say that because I do mushroom hunting and stuff, but I just this afternoon got some freshly foraged Oregon white truffles.
Oh, wow.
That my colleague used a dog to find, and I just finished a plate. I made a risotto of yellow squash and parmesan and shaved truffle on top. It's still in my mouth. But I've made last year I made a soup where I had chanterelles and morels that I had harvested up in the mountains, and some oyster mushrooms from my backyard, and some boletes that my friend harvested. So I made this 4 mushroom soup that was just delicious. So it's just fun living in a place where we have access to actually collect food, even in our yards. So there we go. That's my thankful for today. And I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cough, but I'm not like sick. It's just a little seasonal thing I got.
I can share. December is a bonkers time for me at work. It is hectic, but it is our busiest month of the year because everyone wants to work with us. So it's all good stuff. So just reminders that folks want to be engaged in their community, they want to help, they want to support good causes. And there are lots of different ways to do that, between volunteering and donating and supporting all different things, whether it's things like this, or other nonprofits, organizations in the community. A good reminder to me that lots of people want to get engaged, and figuring out the different ways to give people opportunities to do that and engage in the way they want to is critical.
I have one. January 8th, I walked into this building and I think I had city council that night. That was my first day there. And it was the midway through this 2-year planner nightmare. Comprehensive plans are never easy. Some people don't get to do one their entire career. The last 2 years, 2 sessions in Olympia made it a challenge for planners at all cities. And many planners made job decisions to avoid certain things or retired completely. 2 years ago, I thought there'd never be an end. January 8th, I walked into here, had faith we would get to a comprehensive plan, but would not have bet that we could have done it on time. And then meetings. Tonight's the last meeting of the year. Sometimes 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week since January. And last Thursday, the city council approved 289 fantastic pages. So whether it was CAC, tree board, parks board, planning commission, and then today we got the 3rd version since Thursday. Verified that all the fonts, typos, colors are captured. And as of an hour or 2 ago, we're talking about printing. So it's just amazing that it exists. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now I get to read it all again as a novel.
That's a good bedtime reading.
Yeah, let's see if we did good or not, instead of just parts everywhere. But it's here. And tonight's the last meeting and I'm dead tired. But it's been a good year getting to know all the boards and all of you.
It's a fun process, actually.
It's intense. Thank you for all the meetings.
I'm not sure. Mark would say fun. I'm not sure.
Did you get fun in that?
Yeah.
I'm strange like that, I like these kinds of things.
Well, you accomplished something, right? That's the reward for all the
The
work.
team accomplished something.
Yeah. You, the global you.
Yeah.
I can say, I have like 10 things that went through my head, one that I had prepared, which went out of my head. So I'm just gonna say that I've been thankful that this year, I'm thankful for what slows down now, but as well as the things that speed up right now in terms of social work for me does slow down, because all the students go away. So just for the time of year and having the opportunity to actually think about something else.
Might get there after Friday.
I'm not all the way there, but I'm mostly there.
Into the countdown. Almost there.
Alexandra?
Thanks. Oh, so many things to be grateful for. I'm loving this, hearing from you all. I think I will kind of echo what I've heard from a couple of folks, and just say, Yana, I will accept my dinner invitation anytime for that risotto. It sounds great. But I am similarly grateful for the time to kind of slow down. I'm really appreciating, even though it's like very dark and we're approaching the solstice, I'm like loving all of the like twinkle lights and holiday lights that are out and about, and just time to gather with friends and family and connect and do our best to like slow down and in the work context. And I think something I've noticed is that I think people are a lot more patient at this time of year because everyone is kind of out of the office. And so it feels like there is like just a little bit more goodwill for humanity. So that's kind of bringing me some joy lately. Yeah, thanks, David.
So we have chickens. I just have to say, I'm thankful that we just are able to have chickens in the area that we live, and that, you know, they provide us eggs when they do provide us eggs, and I don't know why that popped in my head, but I'm just thankful that we have the opportunities that we do have. That's just one of my opportunities.
Are you still laying right now?
No,
One
they
that's
take
still
us.
laying.
Really, they'll lay occasionally
Yeah.
throughout the winter, but they're, you know, they lost all their feathers, and then they're.
They're not, I
Going
don't know, why
back.
do they do that? It's the wrong time of
I
year.
know.
But they do that.
Oh, they do, yeah. It looks like they've been, like a fox got into
Okay.
a chicken coop or something, but yeah.
How many do you have?
Well, we currently have 3. So plenty, yeah, we've had chickens for a decade.
Wow.
Never had anything happen to them, and then last summer. Spirit, birds got birds.
Birds.
Probably an eagle or a.
It was a bird owl flying around our neighborhood.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're, we hear owls occasionally echoing through the valley there.
There's a lot of them in these canyons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My neighbor had 3 or 4 juvenile barred owls sitting next to each other on top of this basketball hoop in his
Wow,
driveway.
yeah.
Just like,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting how, you know, animals are adapting to city circumstances, right? In communities where they had no other reason, no other way but to adapt. Okay, anyone else?
Oh, man.
Oh, and at the
Second round.
beginning, I was supposed to say Stacy is absent. Let us know ahead of time, she's in. Patagonia, hiking
Really?
a famous trail.
And she ditched us for that?
She'll be caught up in January.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, adoption of agenda. Is everyone taking a look at the agenda and, so. Okay, do we have a motion to accept agenda as a
Motion to adopt the agenda.
second?
Second.
All in agreement?
All right.
Any discussion? Oh, I should have done that before, but, okay, thank you. Approve everyone had an opportunity to look at the November 19th. Notes, which I didn't notice in the notes anything about our power outages. Situation, but anyway.
The rebooting. Oh, man.
Yeah. I did notice a couple changes, and I'm starting to take this personally. It wasn't you who called the meeting to an order.
No.
No, it was me.
I read
And,
right over that.
And nor did you adjourn the meeting.
I'm wondering if the tape made it appear like that.
Or our voices, maybe, or something like that, yeah,
Okay.
who knows?
Thank you.
I thought it was kind of fun. Anything else about the notes?
Are you using AI to record, make notes?
This goes to Unicode, and then about a week later, Elizabeth watches the video and
Oh.
does action minutes.
Uh-huh.
So that we get better at them over time. So any suggestions? But yeah, names we should get right.
So with those 2 changes, anything else, or do we have a motion to accept the notes as they've written?
Yeah.
Okay, a second. All in agreement? So let's go on to new business. Alexandra, do you want to just like jump right into this?
Yes, yeah. I will go ahead and share my screen. And as I'm getting this pulled up for screen sharing, I'll just note that my colleague, Maddie, who joined us last meeting, had been planning to come back and present to you all about the policy audit, but has been out sick for the last few days. So I'm covering for her, and just wanted to start with that caveat before we get going. I'm gonna make you guys a bit bigger though. Okay. Can you all still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Great, awesome. Okay. Great. So what I'm hoping to do is to just talk through some of the preliminary results from the policy audit. Maddie kind of introduced this topic during the last meeting, so I realized as I was preparing, David, that I probably should have put this into the old business, but here we are. We're really looking forward to share this with you all. And I'll just give you a caveat that as we kind of walk through this, we didn't send you any materials ahead of time, and that's okay. We're planning to send you all the actual document and memo for the policy audit in the next few days, likely by Monday, because it's right before the holiday. We know you might not look at that until the new year, and then you'll have at least a full 2 weeks before our January meeting, at which we'll have Maddie come back and discuss, and we'll have a really robust discussion at that January meeting. So this is just a bit of a precursor to start planting seeds about policy and what we found in our policy audit, and what we might discuss further in January. Any questions about that kind of brief intro before I keep going here? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay. And you're really small on my screen for some reason tonight, so please feel free to interrupt me at any point if I'm missing a hand or something like that. Okay. So just as a reminder, the purpose of the policy audit is to better understand what climate planning Lake Forest Park has completed to date, with the main objectives being to summarize existing climate-related policies, start to identify trends, and ultimately pinpoint gaps and opportunities that can be addressed in the climate element. So we assessed existing policies that had a direct connection with climate resilience, greenhouse gas emissions reduction, or climate equity. And key documents that were used to identify policy opportunities that could then be incorporated into the climate resilience element that we'll be developing in 2025. So we reviewed several key planning documents, and the core documents are shown here in the dark green on top, including the update to the comprehensive plan, which is very exciting. Congratulations again, Mark and team. The countywide hazard mitigation plan, the Lake Forest Park Shoreline Master Program, and the Stormwater Management Program Plan. And then the documents that you see here listed in lighter green, those are supporting documents, and that includes Climate Action Plan, Legacy 100-Year Vision, the PROST Plan, and those were reviewed as well, but were not the core components of the analysis. And our goal with those supporting documents is ultimately to bolster our understanding of the core documents and seek alignment as we were going through the policy review and database, building out the database. So we are planning to share those quantitative findings from that audit, as well as the memo format, the more narrative version of our analysis. So for anyone who likes reviewing Excel spreadsheets, we'll be sending that with the memo. And then I just wanted to note that we did not review municipal code as part of this process. And we also want to acknowledge that not all city programs, policies, and initiatives are easily accessible through written documentation. And that's the main reason we're interested in hearing your feedback both this evening and in January on this policy audit process. Okay, so to conduct the policy audit, we compiled policies into a database using a template provided by the Department of Commerce. And we assessed policies both quantitatively and qualitatively, categorizing them based on their key focus areas, their priority sectors, and/or the climate impacts. And this approach helped us to identify where Lake Forest Park's policies are strong and where they could potentially use a bit more work to better connect to climate change, or become a bit more specific or ambitious in how they address climate change. And that database was the research behind the findings that we'll be walking through with you all tonight. And like I mentioned, we'll be sending that out as part of our review request. And then on the screen here, we have just a snapshot of the database. I think when Maddie presented in November, we had a similar screenshot, but that was showing an example from Kenmore. Well, tonight we're showing the Lake Forest Park example, but we're not going to dig into that today. I just wanted to note that here. And then so I'm excited to kind of share a few of these high-level results. So this table on the screen here shows the policies organized by priority sectors that have been identified by Department of Commerce. So in the column on the left side of the screen, you'll see priority sector. Those categories are standard as part of the Department of Commerce climate planning guidance. And then the definition is included in the middle. And then on the far right, you'll see the number of policies that were coded to that sector. And that's the number of Lake Forest Park policies or actions. So in total, we identified 127 policies in the core documents that were part of the quantitative review. And this is a relatively high number of policies, which reflects that the Climate Action Plan has already informed the comprehensive plan to some degree. Yeah, just shout out to the CAC for the Climate Action Plan. And then another kind of high level takeaway is our analysis found significant coverage in some sectors, such as ecosystems, water resources, and zoning and development, while other areas may need additional development, such as waste management, economic development, and agriculture and food systems. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second.
I just have to say, is this gonna be, tell me how this is a useful tool.
Good question. So this is giving us kind of the lay of the land for what policies already exist in Lake Forest Park and how are they already speaking to different elements of climate. And then we will use this as a kind of foundation to identify in 2025, like, okay, based on this, here are some recommendations for additional policies that Lake Forest Park could consider to better address climate change.
Are they going to be a
short answer?
Is there a sense that there are additional policies or they're pumping up some of these?
It could be both.
I'm just trying to figure out how they're helpful.
Yeah.
As a layperson, I'm just walking around saying, well, oh boy, policy sector.
Yes. Yeah. Good question. And at this point, yeah, this is not intended to be like for the layperson, for the general public or any, we're bringing it to you in a bit more of a raw state, if that's helpful at all. Okay.
No, I don't get it. I mean,
Are you asking how policies are going to be implemented?
Yeah, well,
Is that what you're asking?
how is the identification of these policies helpful to implementing the climate action plan? That's what I'm asking. Why do we care so much about it? There's a lot of work for this, right? I mean, I don't, it sounds hostile. I don't mean to be hostile. I mean I'm seeking.
But the way I see it is this effort is now mandated by Growth Management Act. Then you analyze what you already have, and Lake Forest Park's already been strong. Now you have the climate action plan. We took those policies, put it in there. This inventories those. If 100 existed and we had 100, we'd be done. And so I review it as a starting point. It identifies where the work is strongest and where it's needed, and then they add where it's needed.
And so once these policies are written down, we get all 100, whatever that we need. And that is the document and the working. A document that you point to when something
Yes.
is asked for the
Yeah.
city to happen in the
Right.
city.
Because right, the way we explained it at planning commission and then traveling to all the boards, right now you have a lot of policies for climate sustainability resiliency throughout this whole thing. What you don't have is a chapter element called the climate element. And we didn't wait, we put them where we thought they belong. And then the effort for a climate element is to take all those, scrunch them into a chapter. Or leave them where they are and add to that chapter so that when you turn to the table of contents, the simplest way to look at it is you'll find climate element, and then they're all cohesive, collected, and at the policy level, covering all those types. And whereas your climate action plan is more of an implementation type of tool.
I have a comment about creating its own section or a question. If you're using it as a document to address somebody's request to do something in the neighborhood or something that, then having it under transportation where the request is coming in as part of that transportation section, doesn't that make more sense? Because, or are you just gonna go to the climate element and say, oh, well, let's check on this, see where this request fits in the climate element.
It could be both,
Okay, I'm just
you know,
saying how.
without too much redundancy, it could be both.
Yeah,
And that's one of the questions that we
Okay.
need to
Yeah.
okay,
answer.
The legislation says you must have a climate element.
but it doesn't say you have to have it as its own chapter, or they do.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Oh, they do have its own
Yeah.
chapter, okay, I got it,
And we're doing that
Okay.
for 4 years early, but that doesn't mean we already don't have some existing policy in transportation in
Right.
housing. And some of it will stay there related to that type. Or get condensed.
I guess I'd offer that, we both work of the climate committee and the planning commission, we really tried to bring in climate considerations throughout. I'm really interested in what this reveals about what we might be able to do in the next update of like the shoreline master program. And other plans that maybe haven't been updated recently. That this will help organize like, hey, there's some gaps here that we ought to address the next time those come around. So I think about it that way too, that I doubt that some of the older plans are as well aligned with our current understanding of climate issue, especially given the work of the climate committee that's really, honed in on that. So I see this as partly a tool for updating other future policy documents. So.
Yeah, great. And for what it's worth, I'll just offer that, we don't like the climate element is not the silver bullet to solve climate change in Lake Forest Park. Like it's going to require implementation of the climate action plan and the climate element and all of these other great efforts that, are underway. Like this is just one tool, one of many tools. So, and hopefully it can be helpful to that end, Yane, to help update those other plans and fill in potential gaps. And yeah, the policy audit process is like the first step in like identifying those gaps and opportunities. So I'm going to keep moving, but I love the questions, keep them coming. So as a quick reminder, we started to talk through these 4 climate impacts at our last meeting. And these, so we're in the process of conducting a climate impact study to assess the most pressing climate threats that Lake Forest Park is experiencing. And we presented these early results in November. Just as a quick reminder, we identified that these are the top 4 kind of climate impacts that Lake Forest Park is either already or will likely experience. Increased flooding due to more frequent and intense extreme precipitation events, higher annual average temperatures, with especially high temperatures increasing during the summer months, increased wildfire activity due to extreme heat and heightened drought, resulting in increased smoke and poor air quality, and then declining summer precipitation, leading to more frequent, longer, and severe regional droughts. Did I hear a question in the room? Sorry.
Actually, I do have a question. So if we're looking at increased flooding, for example, what are we considering as our baseline at this point? You know, how do we know that there's how do we collect the evidence to show that there is increased flooding in Lake Forest Park? Or increased risk of wildfire? You know, does that make sense? Like, what's the baseline that we're basing this information on moving forward?
Like specific to the city?
Yeah.
Good question.
Year that we're comparing it to, or
Yeah.
a series, or like a 10-year period, 10 years. ago.
Exactly. So
Or-
perhaps
Yep.
when they update again in 10 years,
Yeah.
the people sitting at this table can base their conversations on the evidence that we're saying is the baseline at this point.
Yeah.
I think the climate impacts group stuff, when they talk about this, they do have a baseline that they are comparing it to. So I think that's probably.
Yeah.
Where to go to find that information?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the original stuff for King County.
For King County.
Yeah.
We're in the, so the short answer, David, is that we will be including those like essentially the current weather data, like past and current weather data. And then there's like future climate projections will both be included as part of the climate impacts summary memo. That is in development now. So I'll make sure that that's really clear, that baseline is called out as part of that memo when you see that. But for the context of this policy audit, these four categories were used just as part of the analysis for reviewing policies by climate impact. So if it's okay to kind of hold that question in your minds for a future meeting, when we talk more about the climate impacts in particular, I'm going to keep us moving in the policy context, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so on the slide here, so what we have, let me double check. I think I have 3 or 4 slides on this. I have two slides, one kind of on the climate impact section, and then another one for greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to start here with this, the policies by climate impacts. So you can see on the table on the right that we've got a number of different impacts listed with the policies that were categorized or tagged to that impact. So 40 policies were tagged to be already addressing variable precipitation, whether that's flooding or landslides. So that's, I guess, a good sign if you want to be addressing that climate impact. There already are a number of policies there. We did identify some gaps in impacts such as wildfire risk or air quality during extreme smoke events or extreme heat. And then you had a number of policies that are already tackling cross-cutting climate issues, such as policies that promote regional collaboration, policies that focus on protecting and sustaining natural resources, as well as community engagement and education policies aiming to raise climate resilience awareness.
Alexandra,
Ye-
how did we address sea level rise?
Good question.
You know, we're not coastal.
Yes, great question. I am assuming that, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, it's Lake Washington is dam controlled by Ballard locks. I mean, there's no sea level rise issue.
That's a good.
Surge related, you know, there can be sages. but. You know, storm surge from a barometric event piling up the ocean and bringing king tides in. We don't have king tides.
Yeah, good flag, and I will make sure to follow up with Maddie and the policy audit team to clarify what those policies are in reference to.
Yeah, with a local focus, we know it's gonna happen regionally, or the Duwamish River or in, you know, at 2, 3, 4 feet.
This is a real issue for Edmonds.
But yeah, so every,
Well, and some of those things that were referenced are regional
yeah,
documents.
and so
They're
we
not
know
just
that,
us.
but this document is specific to Lake Forest Park, so this category goes to Yanni's comment. Would be captured for Lake Forest Park in that regional context, but would inform the shoreline master program. Because just oddly enough, I was in NOAA's sea level rise website today, practicing, seeing what the colors were. And so I was just playing with it, and it took 8, 9, 10 feet. And then all of a sudden, all the colors changed.
Yeah.
And Ballard Lock fails, the
Yep.
river, the Lake Washington changes. And I can anticipate our outlook is 10 feet of sea level rise, but you know, at whatever projection captured here, it'll have some effect, and it may be very minor. It may just be the waterfront.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what policies we already have that address the effects of sea level rise on Lake Forest Park.
Is that
I'm
something-
just curious, because that's what that says, is that we have 16 policies that address the impacts of sea level rise on the city of Lake Forest Park, or the impacts of storm surges, which again, storm surges, when you have a hurricane off the coast and the barometric pressure changes causing an unusual flood on the pressured side where water's being pushed inland. And, you know, I'll be curious to learn which 16 policies address those.
Is that something that when you send us this information, we'll be able to click through in the database, the data you've collected to say, I wanna see the 7 extremely related ones and like filter to that
That'll
in
be in the
some way?
spreadsheet.
I believe so. I will clarify.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be useful. When I go do the SMP update, both this year to meet the last round, and in 3 years to meet the next round. One of the things identified for most jurisdictions is there is no sea level rise policy or section in our SMP. So this would inform that and then capture it and go from there. But yeah, I'm curious as to the number as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
it's 10 feet,
question.
just gonna be a lot of nights to discuss.
Yes.
Yeah, just like, you know, we're bringing you preliminary results, so I really appreciate your flagging those things, and hopefully I can get that clarified for you all but well before we send the request. Okay, so the next set of policies were around greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So this so VMT is vehicle miles traveled. So vehicle miles traveled reduction and multimodal transportation and transit-oriented development were well represented in Lake Forest Park's policies, closely followed by building decarbonization policies. And areas with gaps include waste reduction and diversion, electric vehicles, and carbon sequestration. It's also worth noting that many of the policies coded as resilience policies and aimed at supporting ecosystems will also have carbon sequestration benefits. We didn't include them as carbon sequestration policies specifically because that was not noted in the policy goal or policy language. So just we'll note that in the memo as well, but just some limitations of the qualitative analysis there. Any questions about these greenhouse gas reduction strategies? Okay.
Well, I just have to say, in the climate action plan, it seemed to me we had addressed policies on waste management, electric vehicles and carbon
That wasn't
sequestration.
in the core documents.
Wasn't in the,
The climate action plan wasn't the core document.
I know, but it was light green. Were you reading, so you weren't reading
It
it?
was, we did review it. It wasn't counted explicitly. So,
Okay.
to my understanding, at least I'll clarify with Maddie though.
The other things I didn't say, building decarbonization, I thought it was an active thing we were doing. We were gonna create decarbonization. But as a source to structure, building structures or something, just saying, it's a confusion.
How do you mean?
So instead of where, it's just stupid. Building as in creating decarbonization, not
Decarbonization
of buildings.
Yeah.
I just read it wrong. I thought, what are we doing? How do you build decarbonization?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's all good.
Great question, and important to use clear language there, so. Okay. Great. So as far as next steps, the full policy audit database and the memo will be available, and we'll send that out by December 23rd. And we're hoping that you all will take some time early in the new year before our January 21st meeting to review that memo and database, however deeply you feel like you need or want to. And then we'll be discussing with you all during that January 21st meeting. So in advance of that meeting, we'll reshare the policy audit and memo, and we'll share any key questions that we might want to discuss during that meeting. And the policy audit memo will be, like I mentioned, summarizing our understanding of those potential policy gaps and opportunities. Based on the audit findings, the Department of Commerce menu of measures, initial staff feedback, and kind of our experience working with other jurisdictions.
So it seems to me that not including the climate action plan as one of the documents you would review in the policy audit would lead to the conclusion that perhaps we ought to have a climate action plan. I'm wondering, I understand they're the 4 core documents, but if that's what was reviewed to create the spreadsheet and this analysis, and yet we have this relatively detailed document that addresses all of these areas, except of course we didn't get into sea level rise. It seems that's an omission. I mean, we have that policy, it's been approved by the city council, and it overlaps many of the areas that you're focusing on. I'm curious what the basis of not including it as a core document would be.
I guess I have a question, maybe it's for Mark. What's the standing of the climate action plan relative to a planning, the comp plan or shoreline master program? Is it a plan of guidance, but basically non-binding because it's not yet in a formal policy document, or is that the difference?
The way we've been summarizing it and putting it in buckets at council all year long, while they adopted the climate action plan, while they knew the comp plan was coming, was that for the climate policy implementation and action items, the missing link is the policy. That's the comprehensive plan. So that's vision, mission, goals, and policies. And then they viewed the bucket that the climate action plan is as primarily an implementation tool or document. Solid there, fortunate to already have it. But in some ways, if this were a linear process, we would have started with the climate element, the policy, and the high level, then sent you guys out and did the climate action. You have it backwards, but it after this year, it won't matter. We'll have a seamless start to end, all those levels, and then what's missing then is action. And those are all the individual decisions on budget, number of cars, types of cars. We have cars, You know, that kind of thing. And so I would say right now, if you view the climate action plan as adopted, valuable, implementation, and sufficient, we're focusing on the step before, which is the higher level policy. And the reason I know this, if we tried to satisfy the legislation at Department of Commerce or Ecology by handing them the climate action plan, their comment overall is going to be, this is a nice implementation plan. Where's your policy? Then I would argue, well, there is some policy in there. Maybe, yeah. We need it in this document.
So we just need to make sure that the policies that have been discussed in the climate action plan are reflected in the climate health.
Yes,
Even though they don't
Yes.
appear in
and more,
these things, we
Yeah.
need to do that separately.
Yeah.
Make sure that they get.
and more. The opportunity is more.
Right.
For all year with SCJ and Christina, the goal was whatever. We knew the climate action plan was heading towards adoption. Whatever is clearly policy in there, go ahead and put in this plan already, wherever it belongs. Then you get to decide, is that enough? Should it be in one chapter, spread throughout and added?
So not all, so what you notice is that there's the stuff that's in the climate action plan isn't yet in,
That
The
was the
comp
key,
plan.
yeah.
and so those are the things that we can pull back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your clarification, because it seemed to me we were trying to include a lot of policy.
Yeah.
In the climate action plan.
Yeah, and it varies, you know.
Yeah,
it-
I mean, it's policy through implementation in many areas.
Exactly, and so the key for me is how is ecology or commerce gonna view this? How is this viewed in the RCW and you know, from the state level, regional plans, with PSRC and local, and what is policy and what is implementation? If those are consistent, we're good. Many locally would see the climate action plan as policy. But it's just being consistent with terms from all those levels. Again, what I see is that the opportunity is to add more policy, not amend the climate action plan.
I guess I can see that the outcome is also to amend the climate action plan, because there'll be things we haven't done
Yeah.
yet. That weren't actually there, that should be implemented, that we can then amend. Once this, because it's kind of this leapfrog, it's like.
Absolutely.
It's a vortex.
Yeah.
We go around the same point again and again.
Not
and
too
get a little
frequently.
closer to implementation. Okay,
Well, for instance, comprehensive plan is long-term, we extended out 10 years and now it's every 10 years. So now that's in place. This year, we're going to do our annual amendment specific to climate, make it stronger, but the climate action plan already exists.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, and I think you spoke to this a bit already, Mark, but for what it's worth, all of these steps that we are following may seem kind of arbitrary and a little bit squishy, but we're doing our best to follow. Like there is a climate planning guidance document that Commerce distributed to all jurisdictions. So we are making sure that we're following those steps so that Lake Forest Park is meeting all the expectations of Commerce. So
And many of those, I'll say,
yeah.
involve the same topics, the same words, and the sentence can be policy or implementation.
Yep.
But as a body, the policy, the words are squishy. Then you get into implementation, you get more shalls as opposed to encourage. Then you get into action, which is do this. That's the primary difference.
Okay, any questions on these next steps before we shift into our next topic? Okay, well, I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you all in January, and we'll be emailing you early next week, and I don't expect any of you to reply over the holidays, but I'll make sure to bring that back up in your inboxes in early January, so that you have time to review.
And we have a couple weeks prior to when that meeting happens, so.
and I personally am just excited to get your spreadsheet.
Amazing. Great. Okay. David, is it okay if I shift into our next topic? Okay, I think I saw
Yes.
it. Okay, great. I think I saw a head nod. Awesome. Great. Well, I just wanted, similar to this policy audit item, I just wanted to start kind of planting some seeds about the greenhouse gas inventory process that we're working on. My colleague Jenna is also going to be joining that January CPAT meeting to start digging in to the community-wide inventory. So I just wanted to, I think between Mark and I, we're going to tag team this update to you all. But I just wanted to share that, you know, as a reminder, we are working with Lake Forest Park to do both a municipal and a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The community-wide inventory is occurring currently through the King County Cities Climate Collaborative, the K4C initiative. And then we'll be working to make sure that is specific to Lake Forest Park. But tonight, Mark and I wanted to just share briefly an update on the municipal inventory process that will be the mechanism in which we analyze Lake Forest Park's government operations emissions for 2023. So Mark, I'll maybe start here and then I'll kind of turn to you and to offer anything I missed. But essentially, as part of this municipal greenhouse gas inventory process, we will be looking to essentially identify the key emission sources and reduction opportunities for city operations. And some of the sources are listed on the screen here. For Lake Forest Park, we're anticipating that'll include energy from buildings and facilities, employee commute, stationary and mobile refrigerants, solid waste, and vehicle fleets. I'm not certain if power generation is going to be applicable, and then water and wastewater may be covered as part of the county-wide inventory. I think that's in the purview of King County. And then I'll just offer that, like, what we did is was that yesterday, Mark? We met with a group of city staff to start the inventory process and launch, it feels like a week ago, but to launch the data collection with city staff. We've asked them to complete the inventory spreadsheets by the 15th of January. And then our team will be conducting analysis in late January and February, and we'll have that complete by early March. And then we're planning to come back to you all with the results of that municipal inventory at the March CPAT meeting. And then we'll have a final report at the end of April. And that'll be a memo kind of categorizing both the municipal and the community-wide inventory. But I want to just pause, Mark, and see if there's anything you wanted to share that I've missed in terms of an update on inventory process.
And the way I view it, is there's two categories. One is municipal, what the city does, what the city of Lake Forest Park does. The police vehicles, the city hall, the electricity we use, that we have most directly under our control. The decisions we make, number of staff. And that category more or less will take a baseline of 2023 and very specifically inform future city council decisions. If the goal is to reduce our municipal emissions by this much by a certain date, this benchmark will inform that and be measured over time against those goals. And the goal is to greatly reduce them. So staff is going to identify the various types that the city does. We are not a water district, so therefore that will be captured in the community-wide version. We don't directly operate the water system. So that those emissions will be inventoried, but not twice. So we're not going to count their operations and they're not going to count ours, but we need to make sure everything's covered. So those things that we most directly affect, the refrigerants added to our cars, the number of miles traveled, the training miles, number of employees, the amount of electricity we use. The attempt is to get all those categories measured with a reliable source that we could check again in the future and throw it onto a spreadsheet by January 15th.
So I've got two questions. Question one is, things like traffic lights.
That's a good example. You drive through Lake Forest Park, there's traffic lights, the assumption is that's a city function. It's a government function, but it won't be in our municipal inventory.
That's what I'm
because they're
wondering, is
not
that
ours.
gonna be, it's a basically. Drops into the community inventory, even though it's a state function.
So, yeah, it's
Or-
otherwise accounted for, yeah,
Okay.
so it won't be in the municipal, but I guess then the
What's the
question
bills for the traffic lights?
that I don't know, Seattle City Light, King County,
Well,
somebody.
no, that literally is my question, because if the city of Lake Forest Park pays a bill to operate traffic lights, then it should be in the municipal.
But it's not, yeah. So our municipal inventory is specific to what we know, what we operate and capturing it. Now, all those categories can be a learning curve,
So,
waste management and all that, and so we have to dive down, but then the differentiator is when you learn who does sewer, who does water. And then the burden becomes, if it's not us and it's not in this inventory, is it captured in some other inventory?
that leads to my next question, which is if the community inventory is being done through by K4C. Then that is not very specific to Lake Forest Park. There are a lot of major elements in the K4C inventory that are done as an average for the entirety of King County. And when I went, because we dug into that in great detail in our committee. And things like airline miles traveled, that is an estimate for the entirety of King County, and we're given our portion based on our population and potentially our income level. And there's nothing we can do to affect that, and there's no investigation as to whether or not the share that's allocated to us in the K4C inventory has any relationship by either overestimating or underestimating what we have, what's actually happening in our community. And I like the K4C approach because it allows the county to cover a lot of information. Given the diversity of communities in King County, given the fact that a lot of King County is not even incorporated and doesn't show up in a city inventory. It lets K4C accomplish a lot of goals, but it isn't really a representative city inventory. The K4C inventory doesn't care that we have the city of Lake Forest Park water supply.
So what's your question? Then for what we're doing here?
Well, so I guess my question is, can we do any better than the K4C pro rata assignment of values? Because I'm looking at it from two sides. One is we have a grant, we're ticking boxes to complete inventories in order to meet the terms of the grant and say, here's your baseline. What would be really cool is at some point we could actually get a real baseline that actually had some relevance to our community. And the K4C baseline is not that. So it will meet the terms of the grant. But what you're saying about, the water district or these streetlights, whatever, no, they're not captured anywhere. Because that goes into the pro rata definition from K4C, which doesn't actually have bearing on what's happening in the city of Lake Forest Park.
Well, you're not saying it's not measured in, it's not.
No, it's picked up in the K4C analysis
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
general
This-
concept.
This slide, this discussion is meant about the municipal inventory.
Yeah.
So the comment is, if we don't do it, it's not in this inventory.
Yep.
But then it brings up all these issues. If we're gonna have
So-
policies for a city of 13,400, where is it accounted for?
So I guess my point is, I doubt there's anything they can do to change it. I can see that they're just gonna roll out the K4C, here's the K4C analysis, since you have this emissions due to. Name your category, there are dozens of categories where we're given a pro rata, population-based emission. We should not believe that that's actually relevant, we should understand the limits of that analysis and not say, based on this, here's our community inventory. As long as we intellectually can separate it and never present it as though that has any validity tied to our community, we'll be fine.
So is that acknowledgement enough for you?
I would like that
Well,
acknowledgement
let
that
me-
there are these pro rata.
So to follow up on that is that we don't actually have a baseline then to measure.
We don't have a
Because
baseline.
in 10 years or whatever, you're gonna
Yeah.
use K4C.
Well, you have a,
Estimate also of like this general thing, which we don't actually know what happened in our community.
the way I would characterize it is you'll through Cascadia. By pure coincidence. You will have a King County regional inventory. That is done per city, right, and. a
We
lot
have
of
that on
is
their
based-
website right now. We don't need
Exactly.
Cascadia. We could we downloaded it for
But-
ourselves.
We're gonna put policies that are gonna be based on that. And I would offer, yeah, it's not perfect and it's not complete and it's certainly not detailed or specific enough, but it sure beats everything else, because there is nothing else.
And if
So-
if I could maybe offer, I think this is a really important conversation. And I would love for my colleague Jenna to be part of it. So if maybe we can kind of hold this conversation for January. My very limited understanding is that the K4C like data team has been working to update that to be a bit more specific, but I personally don't have an understanding to the extent of those changes. And I think having Jenna here to be able to explain the methodology of that community inventory and changes that have been made since the climate action plan would be really helpful. Just if you're comfortable to kind of like hold some of that.
I think that would be perfect, because time wise, to the extent of what's happening in the K4C meetings, it was, when are you available to talk about it?
Yeah.
Right, and so it's too early. When those meetings happen, those questions should be brought up, approached and addressed by all the jurisdictions. And so she might be the perfect one at this point, probably for the next 2 months.
I'd just like to flag also, we have a fire district, water district, and there are those, how do we? That the Lake Forest Park Water District is in Lake Forest Park, but the fire district goes across jurisdictions. How do we? So they're.
That's the
municipal
beauty of
operations.
K4C. We don't.
Well, I just saying they're local, so
So-
that they could be.
Yeah, Mark, we talked about this at the meeting yesterday, but the police, I believe, are included in the municipal inventory. I'm not sure about where we landed on fire. Do you have a recollection of that, Mark?
They won't be in the municipal inventory.
No,
Okay,
because they're funded separately. The entire funding mechanism for the emergency response, fire response is separate. The funding mechanism for the police is straight through the city.
So,
Yes, I was just raising the flag that those are other
Yeah,
governmental groups.
and Alexander, did you capture that so that we can place that in our ongoing list of items to come back to?
yeah, I captured that we have a lot of questions about the community-wide inventory and methodology.
And it merits
That's-
a conversation
I'll remember.
with Janine? I'm sorry, what's her name? Jenna, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One quick question, can you go back to the list of the municipal activities that are part of the inventory? Yeah, so I'm just wondering, I mean, one of the things you hear a lot about are the use of, gas powered tools, blowers, other things, public works and parks would use. Is that part of this? Because those are, very highly emitting tools when they're gas powered. So is that part of this?
Yes, I believe it's included within the vehicle fleet, but if you can give me 1 second, I will find the spreadsheet.
That sheets are pretty impressive.
Oh, okay. The short answer, Yanni, is yes. Yeah, those are included, but I think they're,
I mean, it could be even in facility maintenance, right? Like parks maintenance, but I just want to make sure it's somewhere.
yeah, good flag. Thanks. Okay, any other flags for the municipal inventory? Okay. Okay. Great. Just making my action item list here. Great. I think, David, we're ready to shift into old business. Do you want me to keep the
Sure.
mic?
Go ahead. Well, yeah, so yeah, just continue because you're kind of leading those conversations. So
Okay, great. Yeah, and I did make just a couple of like brief slides, but I believe the first item for our old business is just a confirmation that we sent you all we revised and finalized the engagement plan based on feedback we had at our November meeting. So I just want to say a big thank you for the robust discussion during the November meeting. I know we had some technical difficulties, but I think it was really helpful to hear from you all, and we did our best to incorporate the feedback we heard. So in the meeting packet, you'll see both a clean version of that engagement strategy as well as a marked up version. So like the changes that we made following that November meeting. And then our next steps on the project team side is we're working with Mark on building out the webpage content, and we'll be kicking off the development of a survey starting in early January. And we're planning to just have kind of a regular update to you all on what's happening for engagement. So I think the intent is that engagement updates will be a regular standing old business item moving forward, and that we'll kind of keep bringing things back to you all as we move through the next 6 months. Any edits, David or Anne, on kind of our intent here with the engagement plan item?
we did discuss that, we spent, as a team, we spent a lot of time discussing the engagement plan, and we felt, I think the consensus was that we felt very comfortable with Alexandra, you taking the lead and giving us the engagement plan, and us just giving it our confidence. Was there any other questions though? Because
I think as we move forward, I have a question in terms of, one of this pages talks about metric of success or something, and a lot of that is numbers of people, which is great, right? Having a lot of people in these activities is really important. But I didn't see any specific call out of the goal, right? Is it the goal to get people that we don't otherwise reach in the room and help them understand better with, is it to get the community on board? Or, there's different things that can happen in these engagement things, and what do we, I guess, and at some point you'll do this, I'm sure, but it's not in here, kind of what, at this specific activity, what are we trying to accomplish? Specifically.
Yeah.
So I think that's for the future, but I was kind of looking for it, and I did really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, my experience is you can't tell people speak enough, because there'll always be somebody who comes to the last meeting but I never heard of anything. You have to start over.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that we're not engaging with public.
I think constant engagement.
Well, I think like we're not telling, I don't think once a quarter in the e-news is enough. I don't know I think it'll come back to bite us if we don't do right now, talk about what we're doing and how people can engage and.
So part of this is the webpage content and getting the webpage up and going. So I like having that. We actually were pretty successful with having a QR code that could take people to things like the climate action plan. And we were pretty successful. I think we'll be very successful if we can get people to the website and then have the website be active and engaging. People are looking for information, and having you know, even something as simple as where do I go for a rebate on my heat pump? That would be, helpful.
I think one of the questions I have, one of the additions after our last meeting to the project was specifically listing a direct mail piece to go out to all households.
Yeah.
And I think my question is that something that we're waiting until it's a direct mail piece saying, come to the open house, we're almost at the end of this process? Or is it a direct mail piece as soon as we have a website up saying, we're working on this process, stay
think it was
engaged
a
with us
survey.
for-"
It's in here
It's a
somewhere.
survey.
Yeah,
Sign up to the survey
is that,
was what I think.
okay,
It's earlier in the process in asking people. to
okay,
engage
early in the
before-
process,
Yeah.
talking about the survey, raise awareness, so does that
Yeah.
address your concern with getting people engaged earlier rather than later?
Yes, it does early, but it doesn't do often. I mean, isn't that your experience, as all of us have been out dealing with the public, is you just gotta keep doing it, or people are,
We'll do it in
So-
different ways.
right, so you meet different audiences, so I don't know, and I don't know what those are, maybe it's just, we use the email blasts. They're occasional, right?
Yeah,
The monthly
Age
news,
old,
the
but
city
yeah.
social media, a postcard,
Yeah.
the presence at the green fair, things like that, just making sure that.
Yeah, once the website is there, we can keep pointing people to it, and so they'll know, it'll stick in their head that that's where they can go for information. And that would be really good.
I do like the idea of the QR code being
Yeah.
distributed throughout, like on poster or some sort of
Yeah,
visual.
just having it always up on third place, I mean, if we
Yeah.
have a rotating flyer, I mean, something that's. Posters up at Third Place Commons that change, just a different graphic, so that there's. A visual change, there's something new happening, and with the climate hub up there particularly. Using that as an eye-catching device to remind people, hey, there's more going on, come join us. Sit in a meeting. We have fun. I'm done. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Well, I would say that the lessons learned from January to now on planning commission are reflected in this.
I appreciated that,
Right,
yeah,
the-
but you
The
did very good
timing
job.
of the survey, that 900 and some people took the survey, it informed the planning commission.
Yep.
This year, this coming year will be very similar to that process. The first half, we will be creating. We need feedback, we need awareness, you need to pay attention. The second half is, hey, we have something. This is going to council, please don't show up to the last night and say you're not aware.
Yeah,
Please read it and give us ideas or revisions or additions. So I think this captures it. And Cascadia keeps asking, is anything missing? Given that timeline of those two parts in our mandates between now and June 15th, and then the ability to refine till December for the comp plan amendment, I'd hesitate to add anything.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, based on who I've been talking to, is, somebody basically asked me if I was responsible for their taxes going up, and I said, not yet. Because they're talking about the climate manager person.
Oh, okay.
And so actually, we have their attention already.
Yeah.
From these other surveys that have gone out about a climate manager. So I just realized that we do have their attention.
okay, good.
And your climate action plan and the comp plan,
And the threat of their taxes going up.
yeah,
Oh, I tell you, that,
and the levies
there's
next
nothing
fall.
that grips the population. of
Yep,
Lake
so I
Forest
think we're on the way.
Attention more
We've got their
firmly.
attention.
Than paying a dime.
So we
more.
wouldn't rely just on e-blast, it'd be the survey and the materials that announce the survey. The addresses and blasting the whole city at the right time, the questions in the survey. But what we're hoping is that the group feels that this collection, first part of the year and then the second part of the year maximizes, and then we can adjust from there.
I feel that our comments were incorporated very thoughtfully and respectfully, and that this is a good plan to move forward with. I'm very pleased with what Cascadia has done to take their original concepts, integrate our feedback, and finalize a plan, so. I thought they did a nice job.
Concerns?
Website, yeah.
Now, that is, if we want to address individual items before we leave this topic, the website's entirely on me.
Did you get to take time off over the holidays? You honestly did.
I'm not gonna tell a soul what I'm working on my own time. But today's a prime example. Today was, hey, there's the last meeting of the year. I'm gonna take it easy today and wade into vacation, and then 35th Street floods.
Right?
You know what I
And
mean?
you know, that
And
is
so-
the issue.
There will be downtime. Somewhere in that downtime, I'll cut back on my coffee intake. My interest level will come back, and I'll create the library, do the webpage, and emerge in the new year within. So but that's why it's not with you already.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah. Sorry, I emailed you a couple times about that.
Let's hold Cascadia responsible anyway.
No, I'm too honest. It's me.
Ooh.
When did you have that promise?
I think originally when we talked about it, I thought, well, we'll get into December. If I have it established, maybe not public facing, but at least populated and say, hey, what do you think? The second week of December, that we'd be on track.
Got it.
And now it's, third week.
Yeah.
Christmas is looming, so we're on the wrong side of it.
So we're thinking maybe January.
Public facing, yeah. But that work will happen between Friday and the 30th. And then we can adjust it from there, because it'll be a tool that you can add different categories to. It's like a hub with the QR code, and the library, for your benefit, is the launch. Oh, that was the other part. The speed was, let's have it up and running early December so that it give you some reading over the holiday. That was my motivation. And now today's the 18th, so I'll get there. I predict my
Okay.
interest will return on Saturday.
Okay, can we move forward?
I had another question about, it's on page 13. I didn't know what front and centered was. It's a group.
It's a
Yes.
group.
What is it?
Um,
Who runs it?
They deal with those,
It's a local group that has intentionally come together from communities that are more severely impacted, lower income communities that typically bear the weight of climate impacts in our area. So a lot of the focus in our area is actually down in the South Seattle area. South Park, Duwamish, near the Duwamish. And focusing on dealing with the inequitable impacts of,
Is there a branch in Lake Forest Park?
they work throughout the area. Yeah,
but I think the language, I had a question of language. The follow, to engage this community, I don't think front and centered themselves, front and centered deals with communities.
Yeah.
So they're kind of a bridge organization, yeah.
Yep.
Their connection to those kinds of communities.
The only other one I brought back to the tree board, if there were any other groups that should be on this list, and the only other one that came up in our meeting was potentially trying to connect with the Shorecrest Environmental Club. That from my snooping online, at least has existed. I couldn't find a current contact for them. So I'm not sure if they are still active this school year.
Fortress Shoreline Schools. You can't get into it.
Okay.
And I just want to say, the Environmental Rotary Club doesn't have very many members from Lake Forest Park, and probably if you were going to do a Rotary Club, you'd do the Lake Forest Park Rotary. So
Okay, great. Anything else before we shift to our next item?
We can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Great. So the next item is we wanted to just touch base about the upcoming CPAT meetings and looking ahead to 2025. So essentially, I'll show you all the two timelines that you've seen before, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate and reground ourselves in like essentially what's coming next for early 2025. Since we're just we've started planting a lot of seeds with you all up to this point, and I think early 2025 is going to go quickly. So just you've seen this slide deck, or excuse me, this slide before. We have updated the CPAT meeting, so thank you all for taking the poll. I'm planning to send out those calendar holds to you all for February through June, likely tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And I just want to kind of focus us in on this middle two sections, which is essentially January through June. So like we've alluded to, we'll be launching that webpage. Council and committee meetings will kind of be to be determined based on this group and when we feel like it's appropriate to incorporate their input. That'll likely happen more in the second quarter of 2025. We're hoping to do that community-wide survey in the first couple of months of 2025, as well as the group interviews. And then in March through June, we're hoping to do that open house and have a public comment period, and likely have a touch point with council or planning commission based on your all's recommendation. It may make sense for that to not happen until the full draft is ready, but I think that's one of those kind of engagement pieces that we're hoping to kind of add specificity to in early 2025. I think that's all I wanted to offer on this slide. And any questions on this kind of overall big picture timeline before we kind of dig into the next slide, which is what is the CPAT going to be focusing on?
January 21st, you may already have in your tablet. The key was that the day before is MLK Dinner Day. Council last week adopted that their committee of the whole meeting will be on the 23rd, not the 21st. So keep that Tuesday, the 21st, and the rest are the result of your due.
Okay, great. Let me know if any questions do come up. So we expanded this meeting timeline slide a bit with those kind of additional 2025 meetings. So you'll see the first, let me get my laser pointer here. The first one over here, we're kind of reviewing those preliminary results from the policy audit. We finalized the engagement strategy. At our January meeting, we'll be discussing, continuing to discuss that policy audit and specifically the memo. We'll also be having Jenna join to share about the community-wide GHG emissions inventory, continuing that discussion we started today, and hopefully Jenna can offer a lot more clarity there. And then during our February meeting, we'll be touching back in on the climate impacts memo. So likely what we'll be doing is sending the memo in late January in advance of that February meeting. And then we'll discuss during the February meeting both the climate impacts memo and starting to look to how that content will inform the vulnerability assessment. And then the vulnerability assessment will be kind of happening concurrently to that. So in the March meeting, we'll be reviewing the results of the vulnerability assessment. as well as starting to kind of pull all of these disparate pieces together into what are potential gaps and opportunities for the climate element. We'll continue that discussion of the greenhouse gas emissions. So the March meeting will be essentially pulling the community-wide inventory and the municipal inventory together. We'll have a much more robust discussion about greenhouse gas emissions and what opportunities might exist for Lake Forest Park. And then we'll be discussing next steps for the policy development. In April, we'll have a summary, greenhouse gas summary document to kind of review and discuss with you all. And we'll be likely discussing the draft climate element goals and policies. So essentially like starting to see the bones of the like final, the full draft of that climate element. And that conversation will continue into May. And then by our June meeting, we really will at that point in time have the full climate element draft built out and kind of discuss what those next steps are for that full draft review, and what it looks like to move that through a review and revision process in the latter half of 2025. So hopefully this timeline doesn't make you all tired and fearing 2025. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Sorry, what was that? I think I missed a question there.
Year 2025.
Yeah.
This
isn't
in
it.
the next 6 months.
This isn't.
Given all of that, right, we say it on jest. But I think that the survey questions need to address what is I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to capture that in the survey questions. Like, what are people feeling about climate? What are they, how, just kind of, I invite us to think about, like, what kind of questions can we ask that really kind of get at the center? How's the public feeling overall? Or do people at this point not care? Or is there concern, greater concern, or, what's community thinking?
Those could be some very interesting questions. Interesting if we phrase them right.
Exactly, because however people are feeling about it is going to determine how it all gets implemented ultimately.
My experience to date in my neighborhood and talking with people in my community is the interest is directly related to proximity to the most recent power outage or flood or tree that hit their house, or it's like if you asked, what are you concerned about climate, as everybody's walking around in N95s because of the Carlton fire smoke that kept people indoors for a week? Yeah, there was a little bit more concern during that week. And 6 months later, nice summer, weren't having as much problem, concerns died. So if you ask people after 4 days of no power, and do you think climate impacts should be addressed now? Should we have resiliency planning? Yeah, you get more of a response.
So you're suggesting that we should have power and then have.
I think those postcards should be printed. And then we'll wait till May. No, I just think it may be useful as part of the introduction of the postcard to say, in the last 2 years, we've had these events in Lake Forest Park. So I think calling back to memory of, here are specific things that we've had occur in our city that are real. 10% of our city lost power for 4 days. Thankfully, it was not terribly cold. I really am grateful that was a wind event and not a blizzard event. But anyway, I think that would be good to include in the survey so that it brings people's memories, refreshes people's memories as to the background for these discussions. Why are we talking about this?
You can also use it to set the stage for, are you, what did you think about the response to it? And what do you think the city should help us do with respect to climate, with respect to resilience, to let them know that this is a thing that should be
Mhm.
happening. And that's what we're talking about, right? This partnership between the community and the city.
Yep.
In terms of, so we can use the questions
Right.
to set that stage.
So Alexandra, I'm wondering, when will we start discussing the questions for the survey?
Good question. Yet probably the February meeting, although potentially earlier. So we're working to build out that survey, kind of like the survey specific plan and timeline now, and pulling together questions from other surveys, from other jurisdictions. So that we want to have a set of like examples. So tentatively February. I think our January meeting is quite full at this point. So I say tentatively, recognizing that we may send you the questions in late January for discussion at the February meeting.
All right, I don't have time, but for anything but total honesty, the reason Cascadia was successful in the RFQ and they're under contract underway, so they're really good at this. I am not going to create those survey questions. They were hired.
Yeah.
They have experience. And so the reason I'm saying that is the origin and the spectrum of what could be asked is known. We can get that. What worked at planning commission is a subcommittee to look at those and say, this is what the group thinks. And that could be done outside these main meetings, but needs to be exposed to all of you and then essentially authorized or signed off on at some point. That worked really well at planning commission because it came back to the group, we did it, and it got out on time, it was relevant and great response. So that we put all together, the timeline needs to work for you. And whether you want to have a small subcommittee that headline it, take its extra work, or do it all in the meeting setting, potentially February. And it's a lot of wordsmithing because you could ask the same question 50 different ways.
There's a lot to be said for having people who have actually worked on the technical aspects and the art of asking questions, well, craft the questions. But I think in terms of looking at the survey and the framing of the survey, especially having some sort of an introduction that localizes it and makes it deeply relevant to our community, I do think we can help with that. They can finish the wordsmithing, but maybe we can come up with an inventory of, this culvert was blocked, this power outage affected this many homes for this period of time, this smoke event affected us. If we can come up with a number of events that are relevant that meet these core concerns and use that to introduce, why are we talking about local action and climate change here in Lake Forest Park? Well, this is why. This many trees down. That affected this power grid, that affected people's, thank goodness we didn't have people freezing. Anyhow, that's my thought.
So for the sake of time at this point, we'll wait until January. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we can discuss if we want to develop a subcommittee or bring it to the whole. How does that sound?
And this group's so small, if we have flexibility, the subcommittee could be all of you.
It could be.
But the tool would be email.
Yeah.
And then work done in the meeting setting to get consensus.
I just want to say, I really like what you're getting at with kind of how do you get people into that space where they're really thinking about real impacts. I think that is more about framing, like leave most of the architecture of the questions to these experts.
Yeah.
But I like this idea of how do we kind of convey very succinctly that, hey, one of the reasons we're asking this is a lot of these types of events are expected to be more frequent. Like, you know, last year's outage, like the bomb cyclone, like the block culvert at 35th. And it can be short, but it's kind of like that. Just how do you get people to think, oh, this is the type of thing we're trying to deal with. So I appreciate your framing it that way. Let's think about it. Have Alexander think about it too. But no, I think that's good because people do tune out a little bit when they think climate. And I mean, climate is the statistics of weather. I mean, it's kind of boring when you think about it in that way. When you think about what is that, how does it manifest in my neighborhood? That's, you know, that'll get people's attention. So thanks for bringing that up.
And then we can start getting really technical about it. It's actually a collapse of systems.
There's
Anyway, okay, are we good? Moving forward? Okay. Alexandra,
Yes.
you up about that?
Yep, sounds good. I'm just flagging that as an action item for our next meeting.
But just a time check, we have 20 more minutes.
Yes, yeah, and we are, I think, shifting into our last item here. The last old business is just a review of the action items. So we briefly touched about this during the November meeting, but what we're doing behind the scenes is for each of our meetings, we're capturing all of the action items and we'll be bringing them forward as kind of a standing agenda item for you all. These are the items on the screen here that are recently completed or in progress. So just so that you can see kind of how we'll be bringing this to you all. And then we have a catalog of all of the other action items that have been completed that I didn't include on the screen because I didn't want it to be too cluttered. So for example, you all recently reviewed the engagement plan. We discussed that at the November 19th meeting. We did have the invitation for additional comments outside of the meeting by early December. And that action item has been completed by CPAT members. And then we have 2 in progress and outstanding action items that have been identified during the CPAT meetings. So one is the ball is in Mark's court. I changed the deadline a bit, Mark, in anticipation of kind of the conversation that we had tonight around the website and the library. So that was originally discussed during our October meeting. And I just shifted that deadline to kind of the first week of January tentatively, but would love to adjust that as needed. So it's realistic for you, Mark. And then the third row here is on the project team side. We heard during the October meeting, the action item to develop a fact sheet. I believe, and this is actually one question I had for you all, is I just wanted to confirm kind of the intended, if you all had any recollection of the scope of that fact sheet, kind of outside of the promotional materials and communication materials that we've identified in the engagement plan. And that we have tentatively for January 17th, but kind of an open question there. Does anyone recall the kind of purpose of that fact sheet from our October meeting?
No.
I'm looking back.
I've got I've already pulled my notes, my October notes out of this.
Yeah.
So they're filed neatly, but I can go back and review those.
Did we call it a fact sheet? That what? I can't quite remember.
Again, gotta look at my notes.
Yeah.
And I keep my brain on paper.
I think
Erases quickly.
I believe we'll be addressing this through kind of the development of promotional materials and the survey introduction and the QR code and the web page. I think the intent will be potentially addressed here, but if someone has a recollection of like specifically having a fact sheet for a particular like topic, like outside of what we're already going to be developing for the climate element, please let me know. But I think we'll be getting to this through our other tasks.
I think I would put the key messages page in the engagement plan.
Okay.
To me, those sound synonymous.
Okay, great. Great. And then aside from that very specific question, does anyone have like overarching comments, questions, or concerns about the kind of this action item table, how we'll be bringing these things forward to you all? Anything missing that is outstanding that you want to be reflected here?
Is a live version of this going to be a resource that we have available to us in our library on the website so that we can be tracking and seeing these and seeing all the ones that are completed? I don't know if that's a question for you or for you.
I think that's a question for Mark. So the short answer, Mark, is as like so Cascadia will keep a live version on our system, and we will update this every month for the CPAT on the slide format. And then Mark, please feel free to speak to if you'd like to have a live version on the website.
I don't mind. I could put any document on the website. The way it's envisioned is similar to our current comp plan page, where you have the right column with a specific purpose, and then the center column, which tracks it from beginning to end, and we put the newest stuff right at the top. So as we get 16 versions of this document, the most current will always be at the top, but the right-hand column can be for a variety of purposes. And if one of those is, where is this group at? What is the timeline? What is, what are you specifically working on? What needs to be worked on? We could add different items under a shorter title on the right-hand side. That keeps it in the public center column.
Yeah, one thing to note, Victoria, is like I think the limitation of this action item list is that it's not a comprehensive list of all of the aspects of the project. We talked about this, I think, at the November meeting a bit, is that this is specifically the action items that have come out of discussion with the CPAT. So I think, my personal opinion is that I want to make sure it's adding value to you all. I don't think it will necessarily add value to, it's not necessarily a public facing spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So
is it, the question for him is it enough for Alexander to bring it up on a slide like this each time we meet to help keep track of what progress is? Or do you need to have something that you can check back on?
As long as there's nothing I'm supposed to be
Yeah, that's
doing.
what I was
okay.
yeah.
I'm fine with it, like, in the meeting. So what I was thinking is like, as we move into potentially having things to review between meetings, bring back feedback, it would be helpful to me a week after this meeting when I'm preparing for the tree board meeting that falls usually kind of right in between, to be able to go in and remind myself, not just what was the status as of the last meeting, but what did we agree to in the last meeting that I need to prep for the next. So that's what I was thinking is like, if we could get by next Monday, something posted that tells us our action items for the next month. Yeah. So that we can come next month better prepared. That's what I was thinking. And I wasn't sure, I thought that I remembered that part of having something online, some kind of website landing page would be both the public facing information, but then also somewhere for us to have a library of our reference documents that aren't necessarily like directed at the public, but it's our way of keeping track of what we're doing.
Yeah, the original discussion was broad, and then it became evident it needs to be one spot in a variety of purposes. Not separate websites, web pages, sub pages, or an F or G drive for the city. So the way to do that was essentially start a project specific web page that's easily accessible, keep it less confusing so that the public can navigate it, and then start with an item. Hey, if you're interested, here's many documents you can, you know what I mean? And then just add the documents.
Okay.
The detail of the interest or your ability to choose which one, they're all there. And that would act as a folder in the city drives without having to give you guys permission to have a drive.
So there's that process. Well, we could talk about process as well, right? So Alexander, I'm not saying that you have to do this, but potentially the week after our meetings,
And that
you
was
could send out,
arbitrary.
yeah, exactly.
But
But you could send out spread a slide with the running items, action items. And then, you know, those of us who have action items that we're accountable for, we can keep track of it. And by the next meeting or whenever, we can say, you know, check it off and say, hey. I'm just thinking from a project management perspective, how do we all keep track of what we're accountable for? Without having necessarily go to.
And I think we can achieve it with your slides, email, not the website, because we also have bi-weekly project manager meetings. Where the status comes up, and so it may just be easy to use the same materials. But outward facing would be an email at a specific time to update the CPAT.
Yeah,
As-
yeah, so
our review would have sent to me a week before the meeting. I'm golden. If there's something I have to do in the 3 weeks between tonight and that next email, I'll send a reminder.
That's what made me think, because it exists, because when I get them from you, that's the feeling I have. Oh, no, I'm supposed to do this. And so they're very detailed.
yeah. Yeah, would it work for you all? So I think what I'm hearing is like, it's helpful for you all to have a forward-looking set of action items with those deadlines clearly stated. And I think what I'm hearing is by email is a good approach.
Fine, that's great. Yeah.
Okay,
The added
Great.
benefit is now we have meeting dates for the CPAT. You're all members of existing boards. Those agendas will have a general item of, hey, what's happening at CPAT, so that you can keep planning commission, tree board, et cetera, informed. So that information is what you could share,
Mhm.
like a liaison.
Great. Okay,
And just thank you for hearing us, right? This is what we requested, this is what, and you've, I think you've accomplished what we requested.
okay. Okay. And then I can also, recognizing that I think our email will likely come to you right before the holiday. I'm committing to sending you kind of that review request early next week and again early January, so that in the early part of 2025, you've got that email right on the top of your inbox. Anything else on action items before we shift to just looking to the next meeting here?
Just one related thing. We don't have a city council liaison. It's come up 2 or 3 times, gets buried amongst all the other stuff we're doing. I'll take on that role through the city administrator report and the mayor. We don't have time anymore. January's coming, so
Yeah.
as far as city council updates, I'll just make sure they have what they need.
Do you have any updates?
For them, not until January
Okay.
6th. They're taking a break as of.
Well, you did have an update actually planning for the comp plan.
Oh, for this group, yeah, that's, and plus is the last meeting of the year, so whether it's CAC tree board. Will emerge in the new year with a schedule, and Elizabeth with tree board. And Drew, and me with the planning commission. The new senior planner and me with CAC. Me with CPAT, will fix those agendas and make sure this is captured.
Is there a new senior planner?
January 6th. He doesn't know yet, but he's the administrative staff person for CAC. Oh, and that should, and if that goes well. it leaves the whole question about CAC as a temporary task force, et cetera, but we're going forward. Right, at some point, they'll have to choose, do we amend the municipal code and you're now on par with the planning commission?
I sent a note to the mayor.
Yes.
Trying to schedule a meeting.
But with staffing and budget, we're staffing your meetings. That's a good update.
Yeah, that's good. It's a little ambiguity with this.
Yeah. Okay, action items for the November, excuse me, no, Tuesday, next meeting. January 21st.
Yes.
Everyone-
So I have a question, because that's when we're going to be looking at more results from the policy audit. And from the very start, and I held off because you might have answered it during the presentation. But the very first objective is audit and summarize existing climate-related plans, policies, and regulations. And everything that I see in key documents is plans and policies. And you very carefully stated that you were not going to evaluate the municipal code. So what regulations are you talking about? This says audit and summarize existing climate-related plans, policies, and regulations.
Good
And
question.
there's lots of plans and policies here. But I don't see any regulations identified in any of the key documents, and you explicitly removed review of the municipal code from your remit. So, and I'll be back on you guys about the municipal code, because to me, that is implementation. I mean, I appreciate that you say the climate action plan is implementation. The code is implementation.
Well, it implements, but it's regulation.
Yeah, the
So-
code is the regulation, and the word regulation is here, and yet no regulation. I mean, that's the regulation that was explicitly,
I think the regulation in this context and the comprehensive plan and policy level is like regional state.
Growth
Regulation,
Management Act.
things like that. Air pollution regulation,
Okay,
things like
well,
that. But what it's not is, no part of this is an ordinance that says amend chapter 12.16 of the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code. That comes later. That's not in your scope at all. This is just a comprehensive plan amendment. But regulation can use at least those two ways.
that's what I'm asking.
But to be clear, what this is not is the stack of chapters that represents the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code will not be changed by this effort. It's additional efforts, starting with shoreline management program, which is half comp plan,
So,
half regulation. Then critical areas ordinance applies to this.
so as I understand it, nothing will be changed by this. What this will do is guide changes that will happen in the future. So this isn't gonna change the shoreline management plan. It is going to help corral changes that will be required going forward, or may be available to us going forward that would be good ideas, required or not. That's how I see the code. That's how I see this informing the code. It's the same thing. That's why, I want to be very thoughtful about where regulations are and are not included. If, I don't mean to say you said regulations, where are they? But I do want to know when the team writ large goes through the process of saying, okay, here are our plans and policies. How do we inform our code? How do we use our code to help implement that?
Well, we're
Because that's-
doing them in somewhat of the right order. You need a comprehensive plan, we have it. We're going to amend it almost immediately. We're lucky that we have an implementation plan, climate action plan that's well supported. We have a small staff or a small city, we're not gonna do the big ticket items with grants and not sleep, so we have to limit what we're working on at any time. While this is happening, I'm doing middle housing development regulations to meet a June deadline.
And to me, that's a perfect example of the kinds of regulations that should be informed by all of this.
Exactly, But it's a bandwidth and time issue. That's a mandate. That will happen by June. SMP contracting overlaps that. Critical areas ordinance, we're borrowing time under the Growth Management Act because we just went through this horrendous comp plan update. All these efforts are important and they can't all happen at once, and they're all mandated and they will happen. So for my perspective and my staff and groups and council, this is never ending. But how we label them or look at them, they have to be items. And they relate to each and every level. This effort is specific to policy until we get an ordinance and amendments in the comprehensive plan. At the same time, we're doing critical areas in shoreline. What then has to be factored in is nothing's been updated in 20 or 30 years. Wireless ordinance, subdivision ordinance, how we notice things. And so as those efforts come after we have the climate policy, the climate action plan, those individual amendments to the existing development code become informed.
So to make this clear in my own mind, the policy audit and what we're going to be reviewing in January is an audit and summary of existing climate related plans and policies in order to meet regulations, but we will not be, the audit will not summarize regulations. Except to the degree that this entire thing is being done to meet regulations.
Olympia.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
actually.
I'm just saying, in terms of objectives, we're auditing and summarizing existing climate relation plans and policies, period. And that just, you know, I live in a world where we meet regulations all the time and we're always talking about regulations. And so when I see the regulations are going to be audited and summarized, and then I don't see that anywhere in the following document, I'm gonna ask what are we talking about?
And well, the clear part is they're not development regulations. Otherwise known as Lake Forest Park Municipal Code. They are not that.
Well, and it sounds like they're not much, I mean, it sounds like it's, you know. To meet the requirements of WAC, whatever, this is being produced, is as far as we're getting into regulations.
For this
Just
effort.
like, yeah, and that's fine, it's just, that's not the same as auditing and summarizing existing regulations.
No, and
It's just,
whether it's the survey or
so
notices or
I'll stop
ordinance.
there, but I'm just, I needed to clarify it because I didn't understand it, and it's clear. This is just written in an imprecise way that confused me.
As long as we never use development regulations in anything we put out. Because then we're in danger.
Okay, Alexander.
Apologies for that. Okay, I think I'm passing the baton over to you, David, to close this out. Do you want me to review the action items or
Please.
Okay, so the action items I captured on the Cascadia side of things, we'll prepare to send follow-up emails with the CPAT action items following each meeting. And for this meeting, that will be the launch of the review for the policy audit memo and database in preparation for our January 21st meeting. I'll also resend that email in early January. I'll be confirming the timeline for the survey development and bringing an update to you all in January. As a full group, we are planning to continue the discussion of the community-wide greenhouse gas inventory during the January 21st meeting. And then you all will stand by and prepare to review the policy audit memo and database as needed in advance of our meeting in January. And we will be continuing a discussion in January as to whether there should be a subcommittee of this group to guide survey development. Or if we want to just happen at the CPAT. I think
That's good.
that's what I've got.
Interesting. All right, we look forward to the memo. Okay, so thank you for everything, Alexandra. Happy holidays, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
Second,
Second.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the cookies.
Thank you.
I
Bye,
guess-
y'all. Take care.
Off.
I'll talk to you soon. All right, let's make sure I do this one last time correctly. Boom.